Yep, and I'm also back, but started the new live stream and changed the phones. And actually texted you the new link. So hopefully more people will find us. No, I'm here. I'm just texting Risa. I'm here. I'm just No, I'm here. I'm just texting Risa. I'm here. I'm just sending the links to people, and that's when automatically the screen closes. And I'm gone, but I'm here. It should be fine. I wonder who that. Oh, what? Two more people found us. I will disappear just for a second because I want to email to Heidi the link. So let's see how many people have found us. 3 so far. Yeah, everybody should be notified. Those who have subscribed should be notified. And I sent you a link on WhatsApp. Okay, let's wait for another minute and then we'll continue. Four people, that's good. And we are still in Tarnow, and we have 2 more tours here. Okay, let's slowly continue. So you lost me, it started buffering. When I was showing you that creature, which is a local marketing gig, we're gonna see more of those guys. So now let's continue our walk up Krakowska Street. And another interesting thing on our way is this manor or house or mansion built in the Baroque countryside style, according to the historians, in the late 18th century, either as a privately owned house, which was owned by some wealthy people, or as an inn with a granary. They are not sure. In the early 20th century, in the first years of the 1900s, it was purchased by the city council, and the plan was to turn it into a local theater. But that plan was never executed, and as a result, it was just standing there, abandoned for a few decades. It survived the 2 wars, the First World War and the Second World War. And finally, in 1980s, the city council, still during the communist days, started working on the building. It restored it and reopened as one of the city museums. It's actually an ethnographical museum. And now it has an exhibition dedicated to the Roma people, history and culture. And it's another interesting thing about Tarnow. Tarnow, it seems to be a quite open city with quite clear efforts to preserve its ethnically diverse cultural heritage. And we're going to talk about that more during the Jewish tour. So let's continue. A local bakery chain. And we continue our walk up Krakowska Street. Most of the houses which you see on our way belong to the 19th century, to the time when Tarnow was part of the Austrian Empire. And now the second creature on our way, look, he's a bookworm. So totally they have 15 creatures, like somewhat similar to the gnomes in Wrocław, rabbits in Gniezna. So here they have those guys called mascaron or mashkaron, not related to the local history whatsoever. Random creatures which make part of the mashkaron route. Some are somewhat created with the local history, but only to a certain extent. So this one is here because the building is occupied by a public library. And we are almost at the entrance to Tarnow's old town. This small square in the 19th and 20th centuries was the square of demonstrations and military parades. And up until the Second World War, here ran the city tram. And still today you can see two black lines on the road which mark the location of the tram's tracks. And over there is an old tram. It's an actual tram, one of those old trams which were launched here in 1911, and that was another stage another step of the industrialization of the city. So the trams were launched. They look the same way, the red color carriage with the city emblem, and still today you can see the city emblem on the carriage, the six-pointed star against the blue background and the crescent. No connection with the Jewish heritage whatsoever. We're gonna talk about the origins of this emblem in a few minutes. So the trams were running up and down the street up until the Second World War. Although this was not a profitable thing, the tickets were quite expensive for the locals and were subsidized by the government, and basically were for the upper middle class people. The trams kept running through the old town and up and down Krakowska Street up until the Second World War. Then when Tarnow was occupied by the Nazis, they needed this road because it was one of the main avenues to get in and out of the city. And then further west, so this was used by the Nazi transport and also during the Nazi parades. And during that time, the trams finally stopped running in the city. And after the war, they were not relaunched, but they are part of the city's heritage. And today this tram is a cafe where one can get coffee, tea, hot chocolate, homemade pastries, lemonade, and iced tea. And we can even go in. Let's continue. Another kebab place. And the signs which point in the direction of the major city attractions. So, and basically looking at this list, you can get some idea of the city's heritage. Well, Aqua Park, that's not part of the heritage, but that's obviously an important thing. Town Square, that's important because every medieval town, as we know, in the old days had the main market square, cathedral. Tarnow has a cathedral, and the diocese museum, and the bishop, and the bishop's residence, museum, regional museum, and the museum of the diocese, Bima, and that means that there is some Jewish heritage in this town. Wooden churches, a king statue, and the mausoleum, the whole mausoleum of General Joseph Bem. And that wooden gate, which we've seen earlier, which we saw at the beginning of the tour, that wooden Hungarian-style gate is a gift to Tarnow because this general, who was a very important national hero, both in Hungary and here in Poland, was born here. Let's continue. Heidi, I hope you found me. Jalil, Joanne, I hope you're there. So in the old days, pretty much up until 1790s, thank you, Heidi, because I emailed you, so I was not sure whether you got it. So up until 1790s, here was an old city wall. Outside the wall, there was a moat and ramparts. One of the city gates was here. The wall continued in that direction. And while walking up Krakowska Street, we were slightly walking uphill. As most of those medieval towns, Tarnow was founded on top of the hill. And on the western side, the hill slides down, which actually was very convenient for people in the old days because they didn't need to bother with the rainwater or build any water pipes or any system to get rid of that rainwater because the water simply went downhill. So we are in the old town, in the most historic part of Tarnow. And Risa, I absolutely agree. The city is very clean, not touristy. I've just seen a few people speaking English, and I saw them yesterday. And in general, it's a rather well-preserved place. And one of the main squares of the old town, named after that most prominent king of Poland, the King Casimir the Great. Today it's decorated with a statue to the #1 Polish poet and national hero, Adam Mickiewicz. And if we look down, we see the towers of that neo-Gothic church, the second parish church of Tarnow, which was built across the park, not far from the train station, where we started our walk in the first years of the 20th century, when Tarnow was experiencing the second golden age. And an interesting thing here on the square, which I immediately spotted when I was here yesterday, is that wine store where they sell Hungarian wine. And the store is decorated with the old images of this place. They sell exclusively Hungarian wine. In this place, at 1929, that man by the name Norbert founded the first Hungarian wine store. And actually, of course I did, Risa. Of course I did. I almost bought 2 bottles of Chardonnay, but I didn't want to carry them, and I had to walk for the whole day yesterday, preparing for the tour. So I just let them stay here in the store. I didn't buy them. So anyhow, it's this store tracks down its history to the year 1929, when the first Hungarian wine store was founded here. But actually, the store is also attributed to the fact that in the Middle Ages, this town, as well as Ramashal, where we were 2 weeks ago, was located on a very important wine trading route. And the wine was brought here from Hungary, the Takai wine, and then from here it was taken further down east to Lvov, Limburg, and Kiev and Rus. And look at this other creature. Look at this guy. So if you are counting, this is the third guy on our way. And this one is on a bicycle with grapes. And each creature, each guy has his name. Guess the name of this one. I'm sure you'll be able to guess. It's connected with wine. He's with the grapes. And while you are thinking, I will tell you the story behind this creature. Bacchus. So here's the story. This guy was smart enough and was the first one to realize that there's enough sun here and the soil is quite good to start growing grapes. And indeed, according to the statistics, according to the stats, Tarnow is the most sunny place in Poland. So if you are looking at a retirement place, which is not that big, I'd say quite small, not far from the hills, inexpensive, and has most of the sun in Eastern Europe, so that's Tarnow. So that guy understood that and became the first one to start growing grapes. And then one day he collected the grapes, put them in the basket, and decided to drive into the city of Tarnow. But on the way, he lost most of his grapes. But then a miracle happened. In those places where he lost his grapes, new vineyard started growing. Yes, it's Bacchus or Dionysus. And actually yesterday, this was the first creature which I saw on my way. I missed the rest at the beginning of the street. And I started talking with the owner of the store, and I was like, have you invested in the marketing gig and put the statue of the Dionysus? And he's like, no, these are the little creatures that's part of the city marketing. And there are many of those. So that's how I found out that they have 15 of those, and the whole app, which takes you on a route of mascarons. Why mascarons? That's unknown. So, and of course, there gotta be a cathedral in Tarnow. And that's the Tarnow Cathedral. And the first most important parish church for the city, for the town's residents. According to the historians, the first wooden church was built here already in the 1400s, or already in the 1300s, in the 14th century. Then in the 15th century, that wooden church was replaced with a Gothic place of worship, which was remodeled many times, but the oldest parts of the building belong to the Gothic period, to the 15th century. And today it's known not so much for its exterior as for one piece of the interior, and we are going in. And one of the reasons why I decided to schedule this walk is because I'm not sure that it's going to be open at 6. I'm sure, almost sure it's going to be closed. I made a video just in case, but I decided to schedule another tour instance to be able to take you inside, because that piece of religious art is worth seeing live. So we're going in. The 73 meters tower, which is about what, multiplied by 3, about 230 feet. And given that it was a small privately owned town, it's quite a church. And Tarnow was for centuries a privately owned town. We're gonna talk about that in more detail a bit later and during the second tour. And because it was a privately owned town, this cathedral became a pantheon, a place of burial of its owners. So at heart, it's a Gothic building. Although the ceiling was renovated many times, it preserved its general Gothic vault. The original Gothic vaults are here. They belong to the 15th century. That's also original Gothic, 15th century. And that's the third section, which preserved its original Gothic architecture. Although today this cathedral is more known not for the Gothic architecture, but for the Renaissance piece of religious art. And that Renaissance tombstone is regarded as the most extraordinary, most magnificent Renaissance tombstone created in Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth in the 16th century by Italian architects. You are now looking towards the Saint Anna Chapel. On each side of the chapel are 2 tombstones. And these 2 tombstones belong to one noble Polish family who had owned this town for about 4 centuries. Just think of it. Since the 14th century up until the first years of the 1700s, up until the first years of the 18th century, one Polish noble family owned this place. And their most prominent family member commissioned Italian architect to design his tombstone in the Renaissance style. And then some 100 years later, his descendants commissioned another architect to design their tombstone in the Baroque style. So let's get closer. It's 14 meters high, which is roughly about 50 feet. And that family member was a very wealthy Polish aristocrat, a nobleman, who was basically in charge of Krakow at some point, representing the royal power in the city. He was also a very important military person, and that's why you see that statue of a man sitting with a saber on the horse. And that's the 17th century tombstone of his descendants. The cathedra, the chair of the bishop, and the chair is the emblem of this diocese. Again, the background is blue, and the stained glass windows, which are quite new. That's quite a tombstone, but more remarkable is this one. That's Renaissance. 14 meters high, which is roughly about 50 feet. Designed by an Italian sculptor and an architect around 1560s. And you see this family representative on his knees in front of the bishop. And that's another family tombstone. So pretty much since its founding in the 1330s up until the partitions of Poland, up until 1780s, Tarnow was a privately owned town, which at first was owned by the Tarnowski family. Of course, the last name of that Polish noble family, the family of the military dignitaries, was derived from the name of the city. And then another Polish wealthy aristocratic family purchased it in the 18th century, and they were its owners up until the partitions of Poland. I mean, if you think of it, it's crazy. And that's why this small town, although it was a provincial town, located on an important trading route, but it was never a capital of some region, or it was never like the town equivalent in status to Krakow, has such a remarkable architecture because those wealthy nobles wanted their towns to look beautiful. And the same Italian architect who designed that cloth hall, the trading pavilion on Grand Market Square of Krakow, was commissioned by this Polish noble family of Tarnowski to design that tombstone, which you've just seen in the Renaissance style, and to build this town hall building in the same Renaissance style. And in the old days, the attic was decorated with the busts of the family members of the owners of the town. And we are now on Grand Market Square. This is a sneak peek into Grand Market Square and into Tarnow. That was an intro walk from the train station to the heart of the old town, to be continued. So hopefully we won't have any tech issues during the next two tours, and we're gonna do a more detailed and a very different history walk, and we're gonna do a Jewish tour here later today. Meanwhile, I need to prepare for another tour, but I look forward to seeing you here in about 2 hours. Tarnow is a beautiful city. So thank you so much, and see you in a bit here in Tarnow. You have the links to join the other two tours. The recordings will be available. Thanks, and bye for now. Thank you, Risa. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you all. See you soon in about 2 hours.